now. So in my speech, I'll be first giving some quick definitions on what tiger parenting is, and then I'll be moving on to introducing our side's arguments. First is on harming children's emotional well-being, and second is on bad for the future learning process. So for some quick definitions, right? Tiger parenting are parents that push their children to excel highly in academics, such as providing them with an extreme amount of extracurriculums and homework, constantly pushing them to try harder, and blaming their children if they do not meet these expectations, right? So I think that these tiger parents are probably like quite toxic, and they do push sure their children a lot in order to achieve the things and expectations that they want, right? Moving on to our side's arguments. So our first argument is on harming children's emotional well-being. Few layers of analysis. First of all, there's constant pressure and stress. Tiger parenting imposes relentless pressure on children to meet these high standards, whether in academic, sports, or other activities. This constant demand for excellence creates an environment of chronic stress and anxiety. We think that this is extremely harmful, as children under tiger parenting often internalize the belief that they're only valuable if they succeed, and if they're only valuable if they achieve the expectations that their parents provide them with, right? I think that this leads to an overwhelming fear of failure, where even minor mistakes can be seen as huge mistakes, and children they're more likely to continuously blame themselves and feel horrible once they make mistakes because their parents are also going to blame them. And the environment that their parents create is very toxic, and they continue to pressure their children if they do not meet their expectations, right? But secondly, we think that there's a lack of emotional support. Tiger parenting often prioritizes success and discipline over providing children with the support that they need, right? We think that children in such environments like this, they might feel emotionally neglected, as their emotional needs are often overlooked. Their parents tell them that it's not important, or they're simply just dismissed, right? We think that this is extremely harmful, as without the emotional support that their parents provide and do have the obligation to actually provide, and this is especially important because their parents are what their children stay longest with and they're most influenced by. So we think that if these parents, they lack the support from their children and they don't necessarily care about what they're feeling right now, then these children, they might struggle to develop a healthy coping mechanism, right? We think that they can be emotionally distant or suppress their emotions, leading to difficulties and forming meaningful relationships in the future. But third of all, we think that there's going to be erosion of the parent-children relationship. We think that the nature of tiger parenting can strain the parent-child relationship, right? Children, they might feel that their parents' love and approval is conditional, and it can only be based solely on their achievements academically or through sports rather than who they are as individuals, right? And we think that this conditional love can lead to resentment from the children, as it might feel like they're never going to be good enough, never able to meet the conditions or expectations to achieve the love from their parents, right? And we think that over time, this can create an emotional distance between the child and their parents, which can be very harmful, damaging the entire relationship between the child and the parents, right? But fourth of all, we think that there's going to be long-term impacts on emotional resilience. We think that emotional resilience, the ability to cope with stress, is crucial for an overall individual and the overall well-being of an individual, right? However, the environment fostered by tiger parenting can undermine the development of this resilience. I think that children raised under constant pressure that might become overly dependent on this external validation, struggling to cope with setbacks or failures on their own. We think that the lack of resilience can hinder their ability to navigate, the challenges of the adulthood, leading to ongoing emotional difficulties. Yeah, what is a POI?
So in today's society of overpopulation and lots of stress, isn't being overly independent actually a good thing?
We think that on your side, you're not going to be overly independent because you're going to be relying on your parents to give you these things such as like what you need to do in your life, what extracurriculums you need to have. So you're actually going to be very reliant on your parent, and you're also going to be like not able to gain any support in the future from your friends or family because you don't necessarily know how to have these friends. And we think that like in this current society we live in, we still need friends, right? You still need people to support you throughout your tough times. So we think that independence is not necessarily what we should be prioritizing in this way. But our second argument is on bad for the future learning process, right? We think that there's two types of children under the status quo. First is those that like learning, right? We think that for these children, they're probably going to enjoy and have an incentive to learn without tiger parents. And having tiger parents will only achieve the opposite result, as most people, they feel that when they're pushed to do something, even if they were going to do it in the first place, choice. Now that they feel that they're being pushed, they won't necessarily want to do it anymore. But secondly, it's those that do not enjoy learning, right? We think that this is probably the people that should prioritize in most in this debate, as that is why we need to have tiger parents in the first place, right? To push them. So let's take a look at first why these children do not like studying, right? We think it's because they think that there's a lot of work to do, and they think that other things such as playing video games is just much more fun. Yeah, this is exactly why when you push them to study, they're this is necessarily not going to change anything because they already hate studying, right? You're only going to make them hate it even more when they feel the strong burden put onto them, the strong burden to meet the expectations of their parents, right? We think that it is better to have loving parents that help and develop an interest in studying rather than constantly pushing them to achieve these high scores, even though they still might not enjoy learning as much on our side, or at least love it. We think that at least they won't necessarily feel the need to rebel against it. So the impacts for this argument, right? First of all, we think that this can lead to a rebellious nature because children, they do not necessarily want to follow what their parents tell them to, especially because they don't necessarily like studying at all, right? If they do not like studying, they're probably not going to want to follow the things that their parents tell them to do. So therefore, we think that this is going to lead to the children antagonizing their parents, which is going to lead to rebellious nature, which is extremely harmful for the relationship and the child as a whole, right? But secondly, this can lead to the children hating learning, right? Because when their parents, they're never going to stop pushing them to work hard, right? And also when these parents, they just give them these extracurriculums and additional classes to help them learn and organize all of it for them and give them a specific timetable to follow. We think that children, they're going to be over reliant and lose the ability to organize and plan for their own learning, right? We think that this is extremely harmful for the development of the student as a whole, in the present and in the future, as in the future they're not going to be able to they're going to be very reliant on their parents telling them what to do. They don't necessarily know their problems with themselves, but also in the present we think that they're just going to basically hate learning, and they're also not just going to start learning even if their parents do them to do so, right? No, sorry. So even if like opposition like jumps in and tell us that they're going to pressure you in a nice way, they're going to like tell you the benefits of studying, we think that there's two responses, right? First of all, we think that you're still going to be pressured, right? If you give a bunch of classes to the child that they do not even want and say it's for your good, you're still going to feel a large burden and pressure on yourself. So we think that this pressure is going to exist even if they tell you it in a nice way. But second, we think that most of the time tiger parents aren't necessarily that encouraging, right? They just tell you to improve on certain sectors and continue to intimidate you if you do not meet their expectations, right? So we think that the most likely scenario is where these parents are not going to be supportive of their children and they're still going to give you a bunch of classes. So for all these reasons, I'm proud to stand on open.
So I think that the OG has lost today's debate for a very easy reason is that they have misunderstood the definition of tiger parenting. Firstly, as what we look in the info slide, tiger parenting does not include in abusing the child and blaming the child. That doesn't include. Secondly, it is not contradicting for a parent to love and care for the children while tiger parenting, because the primary responsibility for a parent is to love and care the children. And it's also their responsibility to keep their children mentally healthy. Therefore, it's not contradicting for a tiger parent to actually don't love their child or don't provide their child emotional support. Therefore, probably we have already won to the debate. Now I'm going to go into like rebuttal specifically to onto their arguments. So even though they have misunderstood the definition of tiger parenting, there are still some arguments that we can take. For example, tiger parenting does cause some stress and anxiety, for example, because, for example, their fear of failure. But firstly, the thing is that in today's society is overpopulated and people are extremely competitive. If kids grow up in an environment without stress and competitive and all of these anxieties that they will have to face in the future, kids will probably like when they're growing up, when they go into the society, when they start to work, they'll find out that it's completely different from the kids' world and the parents and the grown-ups world. And this is also why the suicide rate in multiple countries are so high in grown-ups. And it's not only in grown-ups, but also in like kids. So the reason of why today kids have have a suicide rate of so high is that firstly, parents are not like doing the responsibility of loving and care. They're only taking the tiger parenting part, but they're not taking their basic responsibility of love and care. So the thing is that tiger parenting doesn't contradict with these, and the reason of why in today and the reason of the status quo of these suicidal rates are so
Yeah.
high is that these parents are not making their basic responsibilities of loving and caring their children. Okay, are there PY? I think I heard something.
Point of information.
Okay,
Uh,
sure.
yeah, we'd just like to ask you, if people already grow up in an extremely overpopulated and stressed society, why is it then necessary to have more stress come from the parent?
So firstly, the reason that we want parents to actually stress their kids or actually get or in other words, let them to get used with stress is that we can prepare them to have an idea of how stress looks like and how to deal with stress. For example, if you do not deal with stress in your childhood and then suddenly in your adulthood you have to deal with so much stress in the society, it's probably going to cause you to suicide because you can't take it. And however, if you take little by little stress from your childhood and you start to like learn how to deal with these stress, for example, like meditating or like just gaming yourself to relax, probably it's more easier for people to survive after adulthood. And this also leads to our four arguments. Firstly, is that the society is competitive, and firstly, if tiger parenting doesn't exist, it means that firstly, these childs would grow up in an environment that doesn't really prepare them to exceed between or to able to competitive or to able to compete with their with their same population, which means that they will probably be have a hard time by finding a job or deal with stress in their adulthood. Secondly, is that having tiger parenting in this population is will create a better future generation, which is a long-term impact. Because having people to not only tiger parenting but also giving them stress is that people will be able to deal with stress. Also, it increases the productivity of countries. For example, in China, in developing countries like India and Korea, if people are able to deal with stress, not only the suicide rate in adulthood will decrease, also that the production rate will also increase and make the GDP better and make the economy better, also make the country better. And this thing not only goes to developing countries, it also goes with developed countries because developed countries also need better people and better future generations with better ways, with their mindsets to deal with stress and all of these stuff. The third is that by getting used to stress, as we have been talking about, it decreases the depression in future, which is like part of our argument before. The fourth argument is that the increase is that by tiger parenting, by these parents wanting to make the child exceed in educational ranges and like extracurriculars like I don't know, sports, ballet, music, all kinds of these stuff. It will be able to increase the economy on educational systems. For example, if you want your child to exceed in math or like debating, you have to get them a coach or like get them substitutes, right? Which means that this also provides an industry. For example, in especially in the society with a lot of kids and overpopulated, this means a lot of job opportunities and also a huge industry on educational system on the educational systems, which also increases the economy of the country. Secondly, is that because parents want their children to have more social experience, they will probably want their children to attend organizations like medical organizations, charity organizations that get the child to go into like poor areas and see that how the country has some parts that are not doing good and how that they can help these children to improve their future. And by these things, we can see that not only that we are having children that can exceed in multiple places, but secondly, they are able to deal with stress. And thirdly, they are also acknowledging like the difference between people, the difference between classes, the differences between classes in a young age, which will very goodly which is very good for them to prepare, which is very good for them in the future in their future because they are prepared in a young age about what the society looks like, what part of the society are different, and how should they survive in the society instead of having a parent that only just keeps loving them and caring them and telling them that the world is good. We also need parents to tell them that the society is cruel. The society is crucial and hard to live so that they know that in the future they need to work hard so that they can actually live and by the same time enjoy the goods of the society, enjoy the pro side of life. But to be able to enjoy the pro side of life, they need to know and they need to have the ability to actually live in the society before they enjoy life. Thank Thank you.
First, several clarifications at the top of my speech. First of all, OG believes that what tiger parenting is should be based on what is the most typical example of it happening in the status quo. OO cannot frame this debate in an imaginary world where tiger parenting is done in an idealistic way, because if this is the likely method of tiger parenting exists, then it should have already become the dominant method of tiger parents, right? This means that OO cannot frame this debate so that parents are going to be angels showering the children with praises at the same time as gently pushing children, because this is not what's happening in the status quo. If you look at countries like China, Korea, Japan, etc., this is simply not what's happening. Parents are forced to withhold affection because they need the children to be forced to learn more. If they're too happy in the moment, they don't want to improve. This is the dominant mindset in today's tiger parents. But even if we take a step back and accept that maybe some parents do want to show a lot of affection for their children, we think that in this environment where everyone is tiger parenting, it is highly unlikely they're still going to be pushed to withhold their affection so that their children has more incentive to learn, influenced by the surrounding tiger parents. Second of all, we can see that parents probably do love their children, but the existence of love and the expression of love are two different things, right? The way they express their love is very clearly defined by the PM. Tiger parenting thinks that their love for the children is reflected in bringing their children a better future. How, right? Because there's so many tiger parents around them. The only way to make their child have a better future is to push them to have more academic success. The tiger parents think that this is the way they express love because children just thank them in the future when they get a better job, right? That's the mindset. That's how tiger parents express their love. And we think that it's unlikely that the tiger parents are just going to be okay if you do bad because I love you. We think that's just not the way they express their love. Maybe they love their children, but the way they express their love could still be harmful to the children and make the children extremely stressed. But third of all, I think the way to tell children society is cruel is not to be cruel in the first place, right? It is to provide children first with a safety net so that they can fall back if society is cruel. But second of all, to construct them so that they can be stronger, they can have a more independent approach to the cruelty of society. It's not to be cruel and add to the cruelty that society gives to them. But also on our opponent's arguments, first on how you have to prepare children to have academic excellence because there's so much overpopulation, there's so much competition, etc. First of all, let's see why this competition exists in the first place, why there are so much people that are excelling, why you need to have the necessity for tiger parenting in the first place. It's because of tiger parenting itself, right? Children don't actually excel if everyone else is pushed by tiger parenting. This is especially prominent in some Asian countries where everyone is pushed to an extent. No one turns out better than the other, but are only collectively burning out. If you look at China, millions of people are pushed to the extent to prepare for college entrance examinations. But even though they perform better than people who probably theoretically don't tiger parent, but since everyone is tiger parenting, they cannot stand out. And this is only becoming a race of who can tiger parent more, who can spend more hours studying, who can spend more time remembering the facts that you need to remember. This also responds to OO's impact on how you could suicide when you get older as an adult if you don't find a job. The reason you can't find a job is not because you don't tiger parent, but because everyone, like there's a culture of tiger parenting. Everyone is tiger parenting. So so that's the reason if you try to not tiger parent right now, you'll fail. But if it's in a world where we oppose tiger parenting, where people aren't actively tiger parenting, then that means that you could excel by yourself. You don't need the tiger parenting to ensure academic excellence, right? The only reason that you need tiger parenting in today's world is because everyone is tiger parenting. If you don't tiger parent, then you can keep up with the other people that are pushed to have better academic performance. But second of all, I think children are likely to be rebellious, and they will be fostering hate for learning. And Sylvia has already given you solid reasons why this is true. First, children only like learning if it seems interesting. Tiger parenting often stuffs you with knowledge. It stresses you out with classes, and while children are constantly put under this enormous stress, they associate this outrageous lifestyle with learning because they never get to try alternative methods of learning, like having fewer classes with more innovative approaches to learning, and also leaving time for them to choose their passions, to choose which extracurriculars they want to take. But second of all, I think children have their own passions too, right? They want to play with their friends, and they want to have hobbies, but these purposeful choices are overridden by the goals of tiger parents. And under these circumstances, children especially feel that their choices are constantly overridden, so they act out as a way to assert their independence once they are not bound by their parents anymore. They go against the wishes of their parents. But third of all, the way tiger parents push their children is to learn. It's not to encourage, but rather through intimidation, right? For example, if their children failed on a test, they're going to shower them with negativity and throw them into more lessons instead of encouraging them to do better. Even if their children did well on tests, they're still going to intimidate them by telling them that if you have to do the same in the future or else you'll fail in society.
This method of using negative emotions to push children makes children feel negative and antagonize their parents. They associate this negativity with learning as general because they never get to try more happier methods of learning. Thus, we think that when children breaks away from their parents, when their parents are unable to sign up for classes for their children, then children are going to hate learning. They're going to stop working hard. Because they feel a strong necessity to fulfill the things that they didn't get to do in their childhood. Before I go on to
Audrey today completely exaggerates tiger parenting, illustrating it into a way in which parents force children to gain higher grades, and if they fail, they will spank them or criticize them until the children have mental problems. OO here illustrates a more rational view. So before I continue on to my extensions, I'll first give rebuttals to the OG side. They say that children will have emotional damage and the relationship of parents and children will decrease because parents will not have time to spend with their children and their parents will be too strict to their children and their children will have mental problems. I agree that children will not have a good relationship with parents, but when these children grow up, they will be mature enough to learn and realize that what their parents did is beneficial for their future and their hard work is all for their good. Since when the tiger parenting, their parents did to pay them off. They had more income and they have more experience in society, and they will know why their parents did what they did and have a better relationship with them in the long run. Furthermore, their parents would assist them along the way. Being strict does not mean the lack of support and comfort and love, as my partner have said.
Point of
Children
information.
will work with their parents after my rebuttal, and this assistance will be almost like a partnership, which will help them along the way since their parents will always have their back. However, parenting often involves high levels of parental involvement in the children's education development. Yes, we agree. However, this close supervision and guidance can provide children with the support and structure they need to thrive academically and personally. Furthermore, my partner already said that tiger parenting coexists with love. Parents provide support alongside with ensuring their child's success. OG's definition of tiger parenting ignores all of the other perspectives of being a tiger parent. Yes, they push their children, but they support them and love them the same. They say their children lack support, but OGs say that the children lack support, but that opposes their own definition because they say tiger parents push children to success. That requires support the same way as normal parenting. They overly exaggerate the extent to which tiger parenting pushes their children. As a parent, they will not treat their children as a prisoner or as a controllable tool. They want to make sure that their children become ready for the future. They also say that children will not be able to think about what they want in their goals. However, letting parents pushing children does not mean that children does not have a good time management skill, and does not mean that the children won't think independently in the future. They say tiger parents think the way they express love is through pushing their children. This is true for some parents. However, the consequences is less severe than what OG has said and actually beneficial, which is what I'll extend on our team's two arguments. Before I continue on, what is your POI?
So you said that you were willing to cop having a worse relationship at childhood because the child like succeeds later on and thus they are able to like realize that like that parent did like what was worth it. But I'd just like to ask you like what happens if these individuals don't succeed?
So first of all, you said that I said there will be worse relationship, but I didn't say that at first the relationship will be bad. I say that the relationship will be kind of like support and comfort and like partnership because parents support their children on the way even when they're pushing them because they want their children to be successful. And what you're saying that if their children does not succeed is actually kind of out of this debate because we're only talking about tiger parenting and not if what they will do if the children does not succeed. Because I don't know what tiger parents will do if their children does not succeed. But yeah, that's actually irrelevant. And now on to our my extensions. My partner gave 4 arguments and now will extend on 2 of them. The first one is that by tiger parenting, we prepare children for the future society because the most important part of tiger parenting is by making their children independent. By being strict, these children can be more independent as they have a strict schedule, With time, they will grow more mature and will gradually develop a habit to work for their best. They manage their time well and cherish their time also. It is essential for parents to set this fundamental basic skill for their children. In the long run, this has always been essential for when they are in college or doing the job. They will need to be independent and manage their time strictly, since as their grades increase, their time will become more cramped and filled with many things to do and many deadlines. And so this can be solved by their previous experience when their parents are pushing them to strive for their best and succeed. By practicing this already when they are children, this habit is already marked in their veins and they would face these challenges and deadlines more fluently and smoothly. Our second argument is related to a better younger generation. So first of all, tiger parenting teaches children the value of resilience and perseverance in the face of challenges because they push their children out of their comfort zone and encourage them to strive for excellence. Tiger parenting helps children to develop the resilience needed to overcome obstacles in life. The parents also emphasize setting and achieving goals because you have to set a goal and achieve them in order to succeed, right? So children learn the importance of setting high standards for themselves and work hard to reach these goals. And this can instill a sense of achievement and satisfaction in their accomplishments. Why would tiger parenting prove to be an advantage in the future? My partner already said there's a competitive advantage. In the competitive world that we live in now, children raised under tiger parenting may have a competitive advantage due to their strong academic background, work ethic, and resilience. These qualities can set them apart and open up, I will not accept any POIs, and open up more opportunities in the future. And also, it brings up academic excellence. Tiger parenting is characterized by higher expectations and rigorous disciplines, and this will ultimately lead to academic success. By setting high standards and pushing children to excel academically, tiger parenting can help children achieve their full potential in school. Tiger parenting also makes the students more disciplined and have a more strict time schedule and a strong work ethic. Because they emphasize hard work, perseverance, and dedication, they want their children to succeed. And so, children who are raised under these circumstances are more likely to develop the persistence needed to overcome challenges and achieve their goals. And so, they can be better prepared for success. Learning independence is most important to students, and I will clarify this again because parents cannot give children the security they would have in their lives, and children will need to learn how to be independent because they cannot rely on their parents forever. And so for all these reasons above, we are very proud to oppose. Thank you.
Speaker, OO made zero contribution within this debate because they made the assumption that expectations equates to reality. This is not the case. Just because my music teacher expects me to practice does not mean that I practice in reality, right? They needed to provide an actual mechanism as to why expectations equates to reality. They tell you that you have a better relationship with parents initially, but then you like get better as that goes on, while explaining that there's a really competitive environment where not all individuals succeed. Then at that point where you believe that you weren't gonna have a good relationship with parents initially, as OG characterized, but also this is an extremely competitive environment as OO characterized, then you also all believe that when inevitably a portion of individuals didn't succeed under this tiger parenting, they ultimately had the biggest betrayal in their lives. They felt that the biggest trade-off within their life wasn't fulfilled. They felt that they couldn't trust their parent. They ultimately, this bond was extremely, was ruined. Ultimately, this is really bad. 3 extensions in this speech. First, providing explicit setup as to what government's ultimate world actually looks like. This automatically puts us in front of OG because without this, all their benefits couldn't accrue. So what do parents look like? Not that they take a more supportive role, that ultimately they hold their kids more accountable, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they automatically just like shoving like their beliefs down their throats, right? I think what it looks like is they take like as a more supportive role. They allow their kids to like explore the world and foster their beliefs. And when like curiosity, rather than say, okay, you're gonna learn violin, okay, you're gonna do math tutoring, therefore you are now good at math, therefore you're now good at violin. That is the side that which opening opposition is supposed to be supporting. But I think they're also just like less controlling of the social circumstances. Like they allow individuals to like say take more social adventure. And on these kids, I think we just tell you that they have a more equal parent-child relationship, which is greater communication as to what they want these like into like what their hobbies want to be and what they're actually interested in. That automatically got us in front of in this debate and gave us the first position because we accrued all of OG's benefits. Two extensions then. Firstly, as to why these individuals are just far better socially on our side. Secondly, as to why individuals are able to form their own identity. Firstly, on socially, note that Wang, before I even began on this argument, was that this was logically prior to any arguments on success or like say a parent bond, because it was like in order to succeed, in order to have like a good parent bond, you needed these communication skills in order to build those bonds in order to say get past the job interview. That was why even if opposition were able to prove that they say got smarter kids, the reason that you all value our argument higher was because you couldn't actually use like being smarter without actually being able to like be socially viable. So what does this look like? I think what the world looks like right now, it looks like say you not being able to like hang out with your friends, right? And like say like having to like stay inside and studying, etc. But note that further, it looks like being able to like not being able to relate to others, right? This looks like say your passions being predetermined, so you can't really exactly relate to groups which you want to be in, but you also can't really relate to groups which you're supposed to be part of. Because if you were forced to do the violin, you can't associate with all the violinists, because we thought that like most violinists, they were going to do it because they wanted to be there, but you hated playing the violin, so you couldn't even relate to the group which wanted to play the violin, right? And know that there's also like entering like grade and like work culture, which they cannot relate to your peers. And we thought that this was already fulfilled under our side with say like comparing grades. No, thank you. And note that further, this like looks like say like taking activities like the activities outside you weren't very passionate about. And know that these are like all essential for work, right? So why was it so bad? Know that you can't expand on friendships or form deeper connections, because you say can't like expand on those friendships outside of school. But know that further, you don't have any common interests, because in the case where you did have like common interests, it wasn't like very useful because you weren't passionate about it. But further, you also like didn't have like interest with the individuals you wanted to associate yourself with. But note further that ultimately you just didn't understand social cues, because insofar that you were say kept inside rather than say going like the mall with your friends, you say like didn't understand like say like when it was like appropriate to do certain things, such as say like I don't know, like go ask to eat out with them or something. That was really bad because like you just couldn't like operate socially, and like ultimately you just like emotionally traumatized. You didn't know how to act when you got into these social scenarios. You just didn't know what to do. What were all the impacts of this? I thought there were three main impacts. Firstly, just know you like had no friends, and in the case because like you couldn't relate to any groups, but like even if you did have like some friends, no, this was like an extremely small group in which like you know probably like all emotionally traumatized, and that wasn't very good because you like say couldn't associate with broader society. Secondly, you didn't know how to conduct yourself. Thirdly, you just couldn't get a job without social skills. That was really bad for all the reasons that opposition provides as to why you need a job in order to succeed, and that was your entire life's work. So, second extension as to why you just get better self-identity or actualization. So, why is this crucial? Just know that like you will live with this your entire life. That's to say, you cannot operate as an individual without realizing who you want to be as a person, what values you say preach, etc. And what happens in the status quo? Just know that first you're just giving your hobbies at birth, so you like can't actually find what you enjoy, like this say being forced to play the violin. But no further, you just like cannot think of yourself, because insofar that you're like giving all your hobbies at birth, you say you couldn't think about like what do I actually enjoy, what do I actually want to accomplish within life, etc. And like note that the alternative then was the status. Note that the alternative was simply your parent giving you everything, giving you all your hobbies, which is going to be really bad because you like ultimately didn't have any critical thinking. You were completely reliant on your parent, which then meant when you turned 18, when say this hot housing ended, when you're like basically ditched by your family, you didn't know how to think for yourself. You couldn't like actually operate within society, right? But know that like father, you just like didn't know. You just don't know what you when you say yes, I'll take your POI.
So parents are not shutting their children away from the world because their children have the chance to socialize in different scenarios, like in schools and other stuff. How can you prove that children are socially incapable?
We think that opportunity doesn't exactly equate to results. That's to say, maybe you go to school and maybe you have the possibility to interact with people. Doesn't mean you necessarily have beneficial interactions for all the reasons we gave as to why you cannot relate to these individuals and cannot understand social cues. What does our world look like then? You just like find your own hobbies, you care about these, and insofar you believe opposition's material about how you wanted to like work hard, you automatically care about this, so you automatically just like work harder. And know that you just like identified with like, and know that you like identify with this further. But secondly, just know that you're like able to understand your purpose, because you like say, hey, I want to do this, etc. And that gave you direction in life. But further, just know that you're able to like actually relate to groups that you want to be a part of, which has provided another mechanism and as to why we get better social interactions. What did this mean? What did this mean at the end of this? We just thought we got better mental health because you're able to relate to groups better, and meant that you're able to like find your own purpose within life. But further, you just like were able to like self-actualize. What do I value? These are questions you could answer yourself rather than like opposition world in which you rely on your parents. what did I accomplish at the end of this speech? Look, firstly, we provided setup, which meant we could accrue all the openings benefits because they were completely reliant on having explicit setup. No, but secondly, even if you didn't believe that, we explained to you as to why you got better social interactions. This was going to be weighed highly because you needed social interactions in order to accrue any benefits which any team in this debate wanted you to accept. But thirdly, no, you were able to self-actualize under closing government, which is extremely important in being able to find your own way within your life and in being able to have your own identity. What did that mean? Ultimately, extremely clear first position for closing government. So proud to propose.
So first of all, talking about this entire tiger parenting issues, I want to start by making one point in response to the opening opposition situation about their final case about how these kids cannot find their personal values. So I believe that Oh, there's a phone call. Sorry. I believe that you guys shouldn't blame your parents for doing that. So consider this situation when you're raised in a, let's say, 13th century serfdom family, and then you're brought to this royal palace one day to eat all of the turkeys inside for festivals and stuff. Do you hate the beans that you eat daily, or do you take those stuff from your parents and gratify for what they have done in your past? So for me, it's definitely say thank you to your parents for having all of this stuff. However, our opponents are talking about is they don't know common sense. They don't know this knowledge. They don't know what is good or right. They don't know what is good or bad. It is this knowledge of what common sense is and what is right and wrong that determines what a person can become and what this person can achieve and whether he or she will achieve. And it is not the parenting method that actually determines this. And under all circumstances, when we're talking about all of these normal parents, talking about all the normal families, is for these kids themselves to realize this. All that parenting provides is the material, is the resource. And this is what the closing opposition is arguing today. It is not about or what the children can become. That's for the children to decide. What we're talking about is what the parents can provide. And that is about the resource. And that is something that those liberal parents cannot provide, and only tiger parents can provide. Now, moving on to my two extensions. So the first one is about in those poor families, whether it is better for the parents to choose a liberal parenting strategy or is it better to choose the tiger parenting strategies. So if a parent doesn't have the psychological inclination to be a tiger parent, then he or she is not a good parent because he or she definitely wants to provide more stuff for his children. In a situation where education resources are scarce in those poor neighborhoods, every parents want the best for their family, want the best for their kids. But the kids don't necessarily realize this until they grow up. And it is their parents' responsibility to guide them through this process and provide all of the materials they need as a tiger parents. And this sort of freedom and liberal parenting does not work because you're basically leaving everything to your kids while there is nothing for them to do. And how can they achieve all of those goals and their noble pursuits they want if there's no parents pushing on with the entire thing forward? And in those poor families, they don't have the resources to be loving and compassionate. Furthermore, those parents are already under a lot of pressure. So it is justified for them to choose tiger parenting. And it is also very important for the children to do well and actually have their noble pursuits. So as long as their children can have noble pursuits, even if they didn't, they tried at least. And this is helping their children. No matter what happens, they're going to have a successful and valuable life experience. Now, moving on to the second point, regarding the idea of shaping personal values about what is like for in our opponent's world and in our world, let's say, so our opponents say that this tiger parenting issue creates all of this deficient value metrics about what is good in life, and this is what is twisted. Let me tell you Judge, let me tell you what is on our opponent's side. Our opponent's side is basically like California a month after the legalization of marijuana. I've seen too many of my 14-year-old peers pulling all-nighters in bar and woke incontent in streets because the parents did not push on hard enough. These kids, they cannot control and utilize the freedom given to them if they are brought up in a liberalized family. And there is indeed an unbearable lightness of being if we're talking about these kids. They don't know what to do if you are given to give them this much absolute freedom at such a young age. And before I move on, I'll take any POIs, if there's any.
Yes, I have a point of information.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
We'd just like to ask you if like these individuals are like reliant on their parents to discipline them, and that was like so bad. Could you explain as to what happens after they leave the household and when they need to discipline themselves, how that happens?
Could you please pardon the last part? Like, there's a bit of internet, like the last sentence.
Could you just explain as to what happens when kids leave the household and need to discipline themselves?
What would happen if the kids leave the house and they have their own complete freedom? Well, let me tell you that uh there isn't a lot of kids who can just like grow up in an absolutely free environment. For instance, if you leave a primary kid into the dormitory for an entire month, you don't know what he or she is doing. You don't know whether he does his homework or not, whether he actually socializes with his friends, or he just play video games for like 12 hours and pull all-nighters all day. These kids cannot control themselves because they don't know whether it's right or wrong. However, if there is discipline, if there is some sort of guidance from the parents so that they can actually become this sort of like self-oriented, probably not self-oriented, but they have their ideas of what is the best for them. And this is what disciplines provides them. And it is absolutely wrong for you guys to say that disciplines is absolutely not accepted in your world. And now finally onto the weighing part. So in response to their ideas about the opening opposition's ideas about how there's these kids in liberalized families have better ways to socialize with other people, if a parent doesn't have so in as I already explained previously, these kids these if those parents doesn't actually teach them about all of this, provide them enough resources in the first place, they do not know what is right. They do not actually get in touch with those people who they are worthy of socializing with. So if they have all of the freedom to with who, so sorry, it's like the final minute, so I don't think you appeal anymore. But like, anyways, so if in these situations, if those parents the parents can somewhat like regulate the amount of people that these kids actually gets exposed to. So if we're talking about a primary school kid who is trying to socialize with other people on the media or socialize with other friends after school, we don't know who they are socializing with if the parents don't actually care. We don't know if they're socializing with like unknown people from anywhere from the society. We don't know who these kind of people might be. However, if there's a parent behind those situations and providing guidance for the students and providing guidance for the kids, there it will be better because they'll be meeting those people who are similar, who have similar backgrounds with them, and they can engage in better conversations and better communications at the end of the day. So thus, please vote for the opposition side. Thank you.
Speaker, three main parts in my speech. First of all, how we get over OO. Secondly, how we get over OG. And thirdly, how we get over GO. So to respond to their team's case first, they had several rebuttals to our case, which I'll be rebutting. So first of all, their entire case is structured around the point that if you don't have tiger parenting, that means you don't have discipline, you don't have parents who actually care about their children, which would, for example, as they used a really interesting example of California 1 month after the legalization of marijuana. We believe that in our case, the alternative to tiger parenting isn't complete freedom, which is their entire premise. The alternative to tiger parenting is regulated parenting who are providing discipline, but also not complete discipline and control over the kids' lives. They haven't really understood the value of the meaning of what tiger parenting is, which is basically being really strict, getting tutoring and housed 24/7, your parents having complete control over your entire lives, which we believe is really bad, as our member has already pointed out. Secondly, they talked about how the parents will be able to provide on the side of the tiger parenting and the liberal parenting. So we believe that tiger parenting, which contrary to what they think, is really strict and is really basically controlling of the children's lives, which in this case, we're talking about the children who are from, for example, birth until they're 18. Their entire lives are structured around academic success and what their parents think of them and their parents' conditional love for them, which we believe is really bad. However, on the alternative, which by opposing tiger parenting gives us, is a more free way of parenting, which doesn't mean complete freedom, but instead it means having discipline, but also having parents who love you and express your love. This means giving the kids actually room to find hobbies, which means not tutoring them 24/7, which means not completely strict discipline and actually letting them have a personality. So how did we get over our opening? our opening provided a wide range of arguments as to why tiger parenting is bad, but they haven't actually extensively proven and given us an explicit setup as our member has already given. So we have already provided crucial setup which was needed to have their benefits that they were arguing about the entire time. And we also gave extensions on social lives and how it's actually going to look like for those kids who grow up having tiger parenting, which is necessary for their success in real life. Their entire case was contingent on the outcome of tiger parenting, which we have already proven has two possible outcomes. First of all, the kids succeed, and secondly, the kids don't. We believe that in both cases, tiger parenting isn't the best way to parent. So if the kids actually do succeed, what is this going to look like? This is going to look like, since tiger parenting has really contradictory values of controlling kids before they turn 18, and when they turn 18, immediately letting go and letting them have that independence. This means the kids won't actually know what to do with their lives, which means they will be really lost in lives and possibly not know what to do, as they haven't really gotten support throughout their childhood from their parents. Secondly, even if they do succeed, even if they don't succeed, we believe that this is going to be detrimental to those kids' health, mental well-beings, because their entire lives, because of tiger parenting, their entire self-worth value has been centered around the fact that they're going to be academically successful. And as our member has already proven, this is just going to completely destroy their entire self-identity. So we believe that. Now, my response to the OO teams. So they were talking about mainly how the kids are going to grow up to be really thankful for those parents, which we believe just sounds ridiculous in the first place. But a few responses. First of all, even if they do grow up and are grateful for their parents, we still believe this isn't the best way to raise your kid, because this would mean passing down generational trauma and normalizing tiger parenting, which means their kids might not actually turn out that way to be grateful for their parents. Secondly, as we think is going to be the majority of the times, they just won't be really grateful for their parents. They're just going to have a really big backlash on hating their parents and always growing up feeling like their parents' love for them is completely conditional on their academic success, which we believe is a really toxic environment. And even if the parents do love them properly, it's not really expressed properly, since tiger parenting usually centers around how strict it is and the values of academic worth. Secondly, they talked about how you would get used to stress by having a tiger parent. However, we believe that we are talking about children in this case who are toddlers. They need space to grow, to actually explore their interests, to have hobbies, and normalizing giving them large amounts of stress since childhood isn't the best way to have a child grow up. It is not supportive, it is not validating for them, and they will probably feel unloved, unsafe, and emotionally desperate for love. They also talked about mainly how it's going to help them succeed, which we have already proven. Even if it does, it's still not good because of the emotional trauma they're going to get, and they're also going to pass down since it has been normalized in their family. And secondly, if they don't succeed, this is going to be really detrimental on their overall well-being. They also talked about, interestingly, how it's going to benefit the entire country in economics. We're going to use the USA in this case as an example. The USA isn't known for their tiger parenting because they don't do that in their country. However, they're still one of the most powerful countries in the entire world, which just proves to us that tiger parenting in the entire country just raises the lower minimum bar of standards, which would mean more competing and an internal race to be more successful than other people, which would mean it's not actually going to help the country succeed. Take, for example, India as an example. They're known for their academic excellence and tiger parenting, but they're still not as powerful as the USA. Why? Because first of all, the kids are traumatized and are usually either moving to other countries or they just like fail and feel like they just feel really bad about themselves. And also, they continue talking about how the parents are going to know the best for their kids. However, we believe that in this case, although the parents might feel like they know the best for their kids, that might not necessarily be the best for their kids. Especially because in this case, we're talking about children who needs love and support throughout their entire childhood. And we don't really care much about the long run. We care about how the children are going to feel from their childhood. And even if we do talk about the long run, we believe that in our closing case, we're still being able to benefit more people through social and finding their self-worth. Therefore we have defeated all the three other teams, and we're proud to affirm. Thank you.
Judge, the biggest issue I have with this debate is that the government side is failing to talk about a correct characterization of what real tiger parenting is. They're failing to engage with the opposition's characterization of what tiger parenting is. They're providing a straw man argument that tiger parents are basically dictators. They abuse and shame their children. They don't let them pursue their hobbies, and they inflict this kind of stress that'll give them trauma for the long term of life. We believe that these types of parents are not tiger parents. They're abusive parents. And we agree with the government side that these kinds of parents are wrong. They should not parent these kids this kind of way. However, the problem with this is that the government is characterizing these kinds of parents as tiger parents, and they're building this straw man and attacking the straw man while they're failing to engage with the fact that a tiger parent is a kind of parent that wants to push their children to excel in academics. And we believe that the closest the government side has come to actually engaging with this is in the government whip speech, where they talked about the alternative, which is a regulated type of parenting where the parents do give discipline, but they don't kind of inflict an abusive stress on the children. And we agree with this kind of characterization. And we believe that in the context of this type of characterization, a tiger parent is the type of parent that focuses this type of discipline on academics rather than other aspects of life. So the real question is whether or not we oppose a kind of parents that focuses discipline on academics. And in this case, I'm going to first do a rebuttal of the government's arguments and then rebuild our own team's arguments. So first of all, the OG comes out here with these arguments about constant pressure and stress, chronic stress and anxiety, and a lack of emotional support. And we do agree, the type of parents that they're talking about, these kind of dictator, abusive parents, do cause these kinds of problems, and agree that they're bad. However, the problem is that it's irrelevant to a tiger parent. And we want to further add that, of course, there is a very small minority of tiger parents who are dictator parents. However, we believe that the impacts you talk about, which is stress, anxiety, and a lack of emotional support, also exist within all other kinds of other parenting. Parents who give their children a lot of freedom, parents who neglect their children, also inflict a sort of trauma of neglect, pressure, stress, and anxiety on them. So this type of parenting, which makes up a very small minority of all parenting kinds, exists within all parenting kinds. But the problem is that it's not specific to tiger parenting. So we believe that this point does not stand. Now onto the CG's argument, which is that if they don't succeed, these children will feel very betrayed. And we believe that this makes up the core of their argument, because their response to our argument is that even if they do not succeed, even though they may be thankful to their parents, they will still be a kind of trauma and feel betrayed because they did not succeed. And our response to this is that we believe this is a false characterization of what success is. Let's say, if you just get out of college and you don't get a job, and you don't succeed, the CG is trying to make you believe that this is the end of the world for the children, right? They did not succeed right after college, early in life, in their early 20s. They feel very betrayed. They are devastated. But the problem with this is that your life is not made up of your first early 20s, right? The point of tiger parenting is to instill certain values like discipline, resilience, and grit, so that even though you might not succeed right out of college, because of your parents' values teaching you what is right and wrong,
information,
which enable you to succeed later on in life. You might fail once, but the point of tiger parenting is to teach you that, okay, you might have failed, but you still have a long way to go, and you still are able to succeed in the long run. So in the short run, yes, we agree that these children might feel stressed. They might be devastated, but in the long run, the disciplines built out through childhood will enable them to succeed in the long term. Okay, I'll take your POI.
Goodbye.
I'd just like to ask, considering that you talk about how these target parenting instills values of discipline and self-determination, etc. Why is it so necessary for the parents to be extremely strict, as the info slide explains?
The info slide never says that these parents are extremely strict. It only says that they want to push their children to excel in academics. And I'll also address the problem after I rebuild my teammate's argument. So my teammate comes out and provides you with two extensions. The first being that for poor families, it's very important that these parents focus discipline on academics, because these parents understand that the only way for them to succeed is if their children exceed in academics. And so my opponent emphasizes the fact that even though these children early on in life, they don't understand what their parents are doing. They might feel stressed, they might feel anxiety because they can't understand their parents. But after, in the long term, after they grow up, after they do achieve some kind of success, they will realize this and they will be grateful for their parents. The second extension that my teammate provides is that many children fail because their parents did not push them hard enough. And we believe that this is the kind of world that the government side is creating by not allowing tiger parenting. In this kind of world, the children have a lot of freedom. They are confused. They don't know what to do. And so if they're given so much freedom at a young age, they will essentially destroy themselves because there's nobody to push them. At a young age, it's very hard to foster motivation for yourself. It's very hard to understand where you want to go. So you need the motivation from your parents to direct you, to teach you what is right and wrong. And we believe that this is the marginal benefit of being a tiger parent. So let's do some weighing. So we believe that the government side is providing you with extreme examples where parents are dictators. They don't allow their children to pursue hobbies. And we believe that these situations kind of exist, but these situations make up such a small portion of actual parents that they shouldn't be considered within the context of this debate. Because what tiger parents actually are is that they're willing to communicate with their children. They want the best for their children, and they want them to be able to achieve by being disciplined in academics. And for this reason, we believe. Thank you.